Hello and welcome back. Today we are testing and ranking a bunch of viral air fryer recipes. It's gonna be a fun time. So here we are again with the Ranking Viral Recipes series, and I feel like this one in particular has been a very highly requested video because a lot of us have air fryers at home and want to sort of explore its untapped potentials. And as someone who was kind of late to the air fryer trend, I have also been doing a bunch of exploration on my own, and I have been very pleasantly surprised by the amount of things it can do. And so for today, as per usual, I have scoured the internet and curated a list of 8 viral recipes that I think would be really fun for us to dive deep into. I will say I have really high hopes for a lot of the recipes today, so let's get into it. So this pork belly recipe is something that I've actually been wanting to try for a very long time. I think I first saw it on the Chinese version of TikTok, and I just remember being so impressed by how easy it seemed, and also the crispiness of the end product. I'm using 2 very thick strips of skin on pork belly, which I'm trying to poke some holes into, just the skin part, which is key to having it bubble and crisp up later. For the seasoning, there's 5 spice powder, white pepper powder, sugar, salt, and a bit of shaoxing wine, which is super aromatic and adds a lovely depth to the meat. So then when you combine it all together, this essentially becomes a very flavorful paste, a marinade that I'm just rubbing all over the meaty parts of the pork belly for flavor. Not the skin though, that part we do want to keep dry. The next thing is to make a box of sorts with some foil or parchment paper if you prefer. Just a small step that helps with the cleanup later, but also I feel like it helps the pork belly retain its shape better while it cooks. Now it's all tucked in into its little foil blanket. Before we pop it in though, I'm also brushing on a layer of vinegar onto the skin. This can help absorb the moisture and dry it out even faster. It's the same reason why I'm adding on a thick layer of salt here, in what we call a salt crust technique. Don't worry, it's coming off later. It's not going to be too salty. Right now, we're just doing all the things possible to aim for maximum crispiness. Once that's ready, into the air fryer it goes at a lower temperature of around 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And this part really is about cooking the meat slowly, but mainly, again, to dry out the skin further. You can see now that the salt crust has hardened, and it should be pretty easy to just remove it piece by piece. And I'm just dusting any remaining specks off before brushing on a layer of oil, because for this next step, we're gonna turn the heat up real high. Once again, this is going to help the skin really crisp up and bubble pop. Now I can sort of understand why it can end up being crazy crispy, because there really is a lot of effort going into making sure that happens. And will you look at that? The bubbles are bubbling. The skin really crackles up beautifully in there, and you can kind of hear how crisp it is already. And because there's so much fat in pork belly, the meat underneath is still able to stay tender and juicy, so you end up with all these amazing layers of textures, crisp, fatty, tender, and it really looks quite stunning. Served with a side of mustard, it's perfection. I am very excited for this one. I already have my rice ready, purely because this is how I ate it growing up. Roast pork, siu we call it, an iconic Hong Kong Cantonese dish. I'm truly just amazed at how crispy the skin is on here. It is actually crazy. Beautiful crackling pork skin on the top. As a roast pork fan, I will tell you that this is what brings me the most delight. I was also a little bit worried because I know mine was kind of already split into 2 strips versus like an entire slab, but you know what? It's still juicy, it still feels tender, and it smells right. The flavors smell on point. I also have some mustard here because that's how we enjoy it in Hong Kong. For the first bite though, meat only. That crunch, my goodness. That was a really big bite of meat, but that was so good. That was actually really good. The thing about pork belly is that they have both the lean meat in there and then the really fatty pieces. The joy is to eat it both together. I should have probably cut this into smaller slices, but the flavor, the texture, and I think there is just like the right amount of seasoning on the meat itself. That salt bake on top, it really doesn't make it overly salty at all. It tastes really close to the real deal, which is really impressive. With the mustard is like a little bit of spice. This is a great go-to recipe. 10 out of 10, no questions. As a first try, already fantastic. I can only imagine how much better it's going to get from here. And it looks so impressive. 2 thumbs up. I'd give 3 if I could. This one's a fun one. As someone who's a sucker for ooey gooey campfire marshmallows, I immediately knew I had to give this 5-minute s'mores dip a try. And to make sure we're not making a crazy mess in the air fryer, I'm using these paper liners to hold the marshmallows in place, and these ones should fit right into my trays. Not gonna lie, when I first saw this recipe, it was this exact visual of chunky marshmallows all neatly lined up that made me, well, in polite words, salivate. And this is what I call ASMR for the eyes. And these go in first to soften up for a few minutes while I get the chocolate ready. And the thing is, it's an indulgent sweet dip, so I feel like you can really take liberty with whatever you want to put in. I went for a chocolate bar that has a bunch of fillings in it. So there's caramel, pretzel, almond, nougat, all the things. And same thing for the crackers, the biscuits. I thought it'd be fun to do a DIY cracker platter, so it's kind of why I'm arranging an assortment of different sized ones, different textures. But of course, you can also totally just do the OG graham crackers only. And now the marshmallows are all fluffed up. They're pretty soft at this point, so it should be easy to just sneak in bits and pieces of chocolate. Just tuck them in snugly between each floof, and can you tell I really wanted this one to be extra chocolatey? Then air frying it for another 2 minutes or so for the chocolate to melt, marshmallows to get a nice golden color, and it's ready, our decadent s'mores dip, served with a side of your favorite crackers. Y'all, this is crazy. I'm not sure this is for one person, but it does look super tasty. If you have people over, this would be such a fun thing to do. I'm gonna do a taste test, but there's no way this is not gonna be good, right? This just feels indulgent at this point. A perfect bite. Graham cracker, chocolate, marshmallow. As someone who really likes ooey gooey marshmallows, who always ends up somewhat burning her marshmallow at the campfire, this is a foolproof way of getting that creamy ooey gooey center while also getting a nice toasted golden brown on the outside. And you get copious amounts of it. I mean, honestly, you could even put fruit in here, like strawberries dipped in here. You know what? The marshmallow fluff actually stays there for quite a bit. You can go for as big of a bite as you want or as little. These are kind of genius. I gotta stop giving 10 out of 10s, but this is a 10 out of 10 air fryer recipe. It's the tastiness, it's the fun factor, so low effort, but you know the people are gonna love it. So I'm so doing this the next time I host a dinner party. This next one is what the recipe calls an easy air fryer omelet, where all we're doing is just putting each ingredient in one by one, no frills, very straightforward. But when I looked through the 700 comments the original video had, there was a very strong sentiment that the eggs should be scrambled before then. So that's the adaptation I'm doing here. Though for better texture, I'm also adding in a dollop of sour cream and some cheese and mixing that in with the egg. That's it. Now, just like with the s'mores dip, I'm using the paper liner to hold the mixture in place, starting first with a drizzle of olive oil before just pouring it all in. And then the next couple steps really is just adding in the different toppings, like how you would with your preferred omelet. So in goes the onion powder, some black pepper, there's cherry tomatoes that I've cut into halves, some fresh spinach. I also had some leftover scallions and spicy salami in the fridge, so I figured I'd toss that in as well, why not? The last thing in is just some more mozzarella cheese, and it's ready to go into the air fryer. Once again, super fast in terms of prep and cook time, and it comes out almost looking like a very topping heavy egg pizza, right? I do think though, because I maybe added in more things to the egg mixture than the original recipe, the insides were a little bit undercooked. So I just popped that into the air fryer again for a couple more minutes. So now it's firmed up a little more and ready to be sliced up and served. This one took much longer than the original recipe suggested. It smells good. The texture is a little softer, even though I feel like I fried this for around 25 minutes at this point. The spinach, however, is a bit dried and burned, which I don't love. Everything else looks pretty decent. It is essentially a frittata. I feel like it is a little softer than your usual frittata, which is, you know, usually a lot more firm. Though again, that texture is something I feel like you can tweak to your preference. Ooh, the salami is spicy. Considering the minimal effort, honestly, pretty good. I feel like it's a great side dish. Really great for people who meal prep, I think. Score-wise though, I think I would give the original recipe a 6 out of 10. Mostly because I feel like there's a lot of little things in here that I think can be done better. For example, I feel like if we blanch the spinach before tossing it in there, that might help it from burning so much. But I do think there's a good foundation here, so still passes. So this dessert recipe idea I actually first heard about from my mom, who had tried it herself at home after seeing this pop up again and again on her feed, and she actually really enjoyed it. And the main reason why this dessert is so popular is because of how low effort but high reward it is. All you need are just 2 ingredients. One is store-bought puff pastry, which I've already cut into small squares here, and 2, these glutinous rice balls that we call tangyuans. Texture-wise, it's almost like a softer mochi, and they usually come with a gooey lava-like filling. This one's black sesame flavored, which is my personal favorite. There's no need to defrost it or pre-cook it. All you need to do is just wrap each ball in the layer of puff pastry and tuck in the seams as best as you can to one side so it retains its ball shape. Or if you want, you could jazz up the design a little bit and make these puff pastry pockets. Kind of like how you'd make an apple turnover or a Pop-Tart, just making sure to seal the sides to prevent leakage, and that really is all there is to it. They kind of look like wontons right now. But just for fun, I'm also just trying different designs to see how it come out. And just before they go into the fryer, I'm brushing on some egg wash for that extra shine, that extra color, making sure to also space it out since they will expand a little bit while they cook. Usually pretty fast, about 10 minutes or so. And now they're all puffed up beautifully with a perfect ooey gooey surprise inside. Have an assorted collection here, and it smells very good. It smells very buttery because of the puff pastry. They are very warm from the air fryer, so still very flaky. You hear that like flaky sound? I quite like the shape of this one. Turned out the nicest. I feel like there's the least variation with this shape. Not my first time making these puff pastry tangyuans, but I just wanted to do it again to enjoy it. Also, I feel like in the recent years, there's been this like sort of craze for that mochi texture. So I feel like this would be a crowd pleaser. It's like immediately oozing out, can you see? But it's just like a very, decadent but individually portioned dessert where you get like the buttery layers on the outside, so it's crispy, it's flaky, and then you get the chewiness of the mochi, and then that like burst of flavor from within. It's just such an easy way to create a dessert that a lot of people would enjoy. Dangerous. This is dangerous. This for me is a 9 out of 10. My mochi lovers, this one's for you. Now I know some of us say the air fryer is a glorified convection oven, which I think it has its own pros and cons. But something that I do think the air fryer does better for sure are recipes that try to get the crunch of a deep fry, like this tofu one right here. I have a slice of firm tofu that I'm cutting up into large cubes, and we're gonna fry it until it crisps up on the outside. Before I do that though, I'm soaking it in some warm salt water first. This is super important because it not only helps tenderize the texture of the tofu, but also actually neutralizes its flavor while allowing it to maintain its firmness. So don't skip this step. It just needs a couple of minutes in the bath, then it should be good to go. I'm just trying to get rid of any excess water, especially on that outer layer, because the next thing to do is to coat the entire surface of each tofu with some oil. Because the hope is, again, to get both that crispy exterior and also to get that nice golden color of a deep fry. Once again, just spacing it out so they're actually going to benefit from that circulation of hot air in there. And a few minutes later, the golden transformation has begun. I was greedy though. I wanted even more color, so I continued frying it for a little longer. In the meantime, I'm also prepping my sauce. There's garlic, sesame, scallions, chili flakes, and then I'm letting those flavors bloom with a splash of hot oil. Then in goes sugar, soy sauce, oyster sauce, and a bit of sesame sauce for some nuttiness. And that is ready for a drizzle moment. Honestly, I'm just really impressed with how much the tofu has crisped up in there and how even that color is too. Sauce just goes right on top however much you want with an extra sprinkle of scallions. And I can't believe that is another air fryer meal. Here we have the tofu. It's like just perfect golden cubes. I really didn't think that we would be able to get this sort of beautiful golden color on the outside and this kind of crispiness without a deep fryer. The air fryer continues to surprise us. The sauce, garlic, oyster sauce, and tofu, so good. I think it's slightly tough because I cooked it a little longer, but the potential has that crispiness on the outside. On the inside, because of that saltwater bath we gave it, it's still tender. If I had enjoyed this hot, and if I had just taken down the cooking time a little bit, this would be really fantastic. I feel like the satisfaction it gives me is very much like as if I had a deep fried tofu, which is one of my favorite things to enjoy. So I will take responsibility for all faults here because I truly think that if you enjoy this straight out of the air fryer, served with that sizzling sauce on top, it would be one of my top air fryer dishes for sure. There's so many things you could do with the tofu itself as a base. Would give this a high 9. I would snack on this all the time. And we're back with another sweets recipe. Have you ever seen those super viral night market videos with the huge, fluffy, jiggly Castella cake? Well, this is supposed to be a copycat recipe done in the air fryer. And the first thing to do is to combine hot oil with flour. Unorthodox, right? But what it does is it pre-gelatinizes the starch and makes the batter thicker. But more importantly, this will help the cake rise higher and stay softer later. Add in my milk and also my yolks. And just keep mixing it until I get this sticky, almost custard-like consistency. Because it's key that we want to keep the cake moist, I'm also preheating the air fryer with some water at the bottom. And we'll actually also bake it later with this water bath of sorts. So while that's preheating, I'm making my meringue base because this is where a lot of the lightness and fluffiness of the Castella cake comes from. I would say think chiffon cake, that kind of airy. So I'm just trying to be as delicate as possible while I combine the two. I'm just folding it in as gently as possible so even the batter itself can still stay somewhat fluffy and foamy looking. Remember, there's still some water left in this tray underneath, so fingers crossed it should help give this cake an even bake, where it's just going to sit in the air fryer for almost an hour at a low temperature. The most torturous part is probably the waiting, no touching, but look at this nice, even top now that it's done. The color is nice, there's a good rise, it feels very light and spongy. The only thing I didn't love about it was actually the flavor, because I gave this a quick taste off camera and I felt it tasted too much of the taste of oil itself, like unflavored roux. So I actually very quickly attempted to do another version with butter instead of oil, almost exactly the same steps, except for the part where I accidentally destroyed it completely while rushing to take it out of the fryer. So here's the cupcake version of Castella Cake 2.0. This is a little bit upsetting. I was really hoping it would work. I feel like the first time we tried this one with the oil, it came out looking really nice. Taste wasn't there. And then the second time we tried it with the butter, I'm gonna have to try this one again. But for right now, at least we can get a little taste of the cake with this mini version. Super bizarre right now, mostly because this cupcake liner doesn't have too much structure, but it is a perfectly cooked cake that I feel like can give us an idea of what the Castella cake would have been like. Castella cake is supposed to be super spongy and it's supposed to be evenly cooked just like this, so this is actually perfect. If you want a foolproof way to do it that is a lot less time consuming, I would say do it in a smaller size. Great color on top. Still smells a little bit eggy, but you get that fragrance, I feel like, of the butter and the milk, which is really nice. Perfectly soft and fluffy. It's like a very airy sponge cake, which means you can probably devour like 4 of these in one sitting if you wanted. But because I feel like there's some inconsistencies going on here, I'd probably rate this one a 7 out of 10. If you can do it right though, ooh, you are in for a treat. Ooh. Should I attempt this again? Let me know in the comments what you think. This is another recipe that I was very excited about. As someone who loves Peking duck, but is well aware of how pricey it is and how hard it is to find, I have really high hopes for this air fryer Peking duck substitute. Similar to the pork belly, getting the skin crisp is the main focus here. And the first step is to scald the meat. So just pouring boiling water directly on top of the skin, and you can almost immediately see it shrink and tighten. It also feels a lot firmer to the touch now. The next thing is to dry it again, and while normally Peking duck doesn't involve marinating the meat, since this is, you know, a hack of sorts and we're going with a breast instead of a whole duck, a bit of flavor makes sense. So I'm going in with some 5-spice powder again, hoisin sauce, and a bit of Shaoxing lime. Once again, spreading that mixture across just the meaty parts and keeping the skin as dry as possible still. So traditionally for Peking duck, they brush on a mixture of diluted maltose and vinegar. You could substitute with honey, but maltose does give it a bit more of that glossiness. Because it's super sticky, I'm diluting it with just a tiny bit of hot water, then mixing in the vinegar, so then this is what I can use to brush onto the duck skin. Just a couple layers before letting it air dry in the fridge for a day or 2. And here it is 24 hours later, even firmer than before, drier too, and now it can go into the air fryer. Same process as the pork belly, just slowly cooking the meat and drying the skin out further. And you can tell it's already starting to puff up, but to give it that extra boost and more of that caramel shine, I'm just brushing on even more maltose glaze and blasting it on high heat for maximum crispiness at the end here. And here she is, sizzling hot from the fryer, glistening with that duck fat, the maltose syrup. While it's resting, I'm also trying to make some Peking duck crepes on the side. It's a mixture of flour, water, and salt. It looks promising right now, but we're gonna find out if it worked or not. The duck is extremely juicy. It kind of makes me wonder if I should have let it rest for even longer. But with the plating, I really wanted to just sort of imitate how they'd serve it at an actual Peking duck restaurant. So I'm slicing up some cucumbers, some scallions, with some sweet bean paste on the side, and this is as close as it gets to homemade Peking duck. This one looks really good. I love that you can see this like beautiful color up top, and that duck was so juicy. I will say this is also my first time making these crepe type situations. So I am also curious to see how it tastes. Just going to do it Peking Duck style. So I'm spreading on the sweet bean paste that I have right here, putting on a piece of duck, some cucumber, some scallions. This is a massive bite. And then I just roll it up like so. And here we have a Peking Duck wrap in the style of it anyways. This one looks so promising. I'm excited. When I'm eating this all together, it does taste very much like Peking duck. It's mainly because all of the ingredients I have here are sort of the typical accompaniments you have with Peking duck. Eating the duck on its own, it's still really good. I don't think I would call this Peking duck though. I think it is some variation of a roast duck. Still very good, but Peking duck I feel like is just a totally different category where it's just hard to replicate that same texture for both the meat and the skin. I think I'd give this an 8 out of 10 because while it isn't a perfect substitute for Peking duck by any means, it is on its own still very good. And if you're somebody like me who enjoys eating duck, it's a fairly friendly and easy way to cook this type of meat. So you know what, worth a try. As always, saving the most bizarre one for the last. Granted, this one actually comes with rave reviews from everyone who's tried it. Hot Cheetos mozzarella sticks. The idea is that because there's so much flavor in the snack itself, you don't need to add any additional seasoning. The main thing to do is just to crush the chips down to as close to breadcrumb size as possible. So I'm really going in there with the rolling pin. So now we have this somewhat even Hot Cheetos breadcrumb. It really is a very vibrant red. Then just like we would with any mozzarella stick, I'm assembling the breadcrumbing station with the egg mixture, the flour. Just makes it super easy to go in there with the string cheese. And then with the Hot Cheetos, the flavor for sure is going to be there. But I do also want more of that crunch, so I'm really trying to kind of press on as many crumbs as possible. Before the frying though, a critical step is to freeze the cheese sticks overnight. That can help make sure that they stay in their shape in the heat. I froze them for 24 hours, but I really wanted to get a better melt on the cheese, so I may have left them in the fryer for a little longer, which unfortunately made them deflate, but cheesy sticks we have. Well, would have made more again if I had more Hot Cheetos at home, but this is all I have. Hey look, you know, the thing is, if it's melted mozzarella, it's still gonna be good, right? It's a little flat right now, but it's still bright red. Still smells like spicy Hot Cheetos. Let's get a cheese pull. I'm eating. The beauty, at least, about overcooking your mozzarella cheese sticks is that it's definitely going to be melty. You really don't have to season it at all. All of that flavor, the cheesiness, the spiciness is coming from the Hot Cheetos. And actually, I would argue by eating it this way, it's probably less spicy than usual because the mozzarella cheese, the dairy, kind of helps balance out the spiciness a little bit. And it's like a very nice savoriness. Looks a little bit like a fruit roll-up, but I do like these little golden bits of melted cheese in there. You know what, I'm not mad about it. It might not look the most appetizing right now, but if I had some late night cravings for some junk food, some melted cheese, this would really hit the spot. I would give this a solid 7 out of 10. Super easy way to throw together some mozzarella cheese sticks. Just depending on the air fryer, you can end up making a mess. And so there it is, all 8 of the viral air fryer recipes tested, rated. I feel like I've learned a lot more about what the air fryer can do. I do also want to say, in my research process, I did find a lot more air fryer recipes to test. So if you want to see another air fryer recipe video, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, remember to like and subscribe as always, and I will see you in the next video.